two, one, and we're back. All right, hello everyone. Back to another episode of our Triangle Splash podcast. We got an exciting week. I know sometimes we usually release this episode on Saturday, so maybe by this time the trade deadline has already passed, but the trade deadline is happening actually in a few hours from when we're recording this. So some of the things that we talk are just going to be predictions, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, let's kick it off with our first topic of the week: Dynasty impact. So we're going to talk about a trade or a signing that happened tomorrow, or maybe it has already happened, and how it will impact fantasy and team rotation.
Yep. Well, since I came up with this topic, I'll go first. This trade actually happened last week. I think in terms of impact on fantasy, it's much less compared to real life. So the trade I'm talking about is PJ Tucker being traded from the Houston Rockets to the Milwaukee Bucks. So as we have mentioned in previous episodes, PJ Tucker 嗰個 fantasy impact 其實係比較低嘅，咁佢 most 嘅 contribution 都係 more that doesn't show up on the stats。所以我覺得in terms of fantasy impact for Milwaukee players, it's more so of players that aren't going to be getting as much opportunity and minutes due to PJ Tucker being traded to the Bucks. That being Brook Lopez and also Bobby Portis. 其實 Bobby Portis 今年都打得幾好嘅，多咗好多minutes 啦，同埋佢個3-point percentage 都係 career high 嚟嘅。咁但係 PJ Tucker 出咗去之後咧，當然佢而家都仲未打到好多 minutes 啦，因為佢仲係要 get used to the rotation 啊，同埋 plays within the Bucks。但係during crunch time and maybe even later on this year, I think we'll see Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis' minutes and fantasy impact being diminished because of PJ Tucker coming.
What do you think, Angus?
Agreed. I think definitely PJ Tucker is one of those intangible players who look great in real life, but not on the stat sheet. So he definitely will take away minutes, and minutes usually do translate to production, especially for certain players. So I think once PJ Tucker starts, defending a lot of big player minutes, it'll eat into some of the big center times of Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis. And then hopefully it means that there will be more touches for everyone else. Like for example, the guards like Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis, they'll get more opportunities to just, get the stats. But I do think I think the rebounding numbers may go down all across the board.
I think in a way it might affect Giannis as well, but in terms of rebounding, right? 因為而家 even down the stretch to close games, but the Bucks with PJ Tucker in there, they would have Tucker, Giannis, Drew Holiday, Middleton, and maybe DiVincenzo. So I think maybe possibly the rebounding numbers of Giannis will take a hit as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of, I think I actually find that the contrary because regardless, I still think Giannis is going to be right in the middle of everything. Because with Drew Holiday coming back from injury, Drew Holiday coming back from injuries, it doesn't actually affect Giannis stats, although Giannis has been injured and out for the past few games. But then whenever the big threes of the Bucks are playing, Giannis is still grabbing everything across the board. So in terms of production wise, I still think Giannis is going to be very, very solid. It's not going to be that big of a dip, but then maybe Bobby Portis minutes will diminish, but then Bobby Portis is just going to be giving you, maybe 8 points and like 5 rebounds and then 2 assists a game. However, like he will have, every 2 or 3 games, he will have one of those like 15, 10 rebounds and like three pointers, like a really efficient player. So, I mean, like looking forward to next year, I think Bobby Portis is going to be, if he gets to a bigger role or he gets to a team with a much bigger role, he is going to be a very impactful fantasy player. But yeah, I think, but yeah, PJ Tucker is certainly one of those um, in-game specialists that have impact in real life, but not so much in fantasy.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
To I'll talk about a signing or a potential trade. So this player has actually been rumored quite a lot,
Yeah.
but maybe not as for sure. So I'm talking about Lonzo Ball, the New Orleans Pelicans. So he's definitely actually like a really good point guard. Uh, Obviously, like because of previous social medias, he's been hyped up a lot to be like some crazy offensive superstar, which is not really his game. But anyways, I think New Orleans is they don't really see him. It's reported that they don't really see him in their future. They definitely want to focus more on Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson.
Mhm.
So they could, look to move on from Lonzo just so that they can get a different piece that will better fill in their team so that the team can surround those two more.
Yep.
And so let's just say wherever Lonzo goes, regardless of who comes back, there will be a lot of guard minutes. And because Lonzo's been injured a few of the games, you've seen some guards step up. So the biggest guard that I'm looking at is actually Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So the past two games, Lonzo's been out and he started. And in these two games, he's averaged 19 points, one steal, three three-pointers in 33 minutes of play. So it's a lot of minutes for basically who was like a backup point guard for them. And I think his style actually works, will complement Ingram and Zion, a good pass first guard. And fun fact, he's actually the cousin of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
Oh.
So he's Canadian.
He's Canadian as well. And
Wow.
they kind of play similar too, like kind of very controlled guards, which explains why their names are so long too. But in addition to Nikhil, I think Josh Hart, Eric Bledsoe, and even Kira Lewis Jr. These are guards that may get a lot of opportunity. But of course,
Yep.
it depends who they get back in return for Lonzo.
Yep.
No,
think
I totally
yeah, go
agree
ahead.
with that. I think because Lonzo Ball has been having a really, actually, like pretty much a breakout year this year. So I think the Pelicans are selling high on Lonzo, and they have so much depth in the guards with what you mentioned with Alexander Walker, Kira Lewis, Eric Bledsoe, that they can afford to sell high on him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I agree. The fact that I think Lonzo is having a breakout year, but then also a lot of teams are looking for that guard. But I think mainly we've been hearing a lot about the Clippers. They're going to take a good shot at him, and then I think he will actually fit into the Clippers really well, just because he can play defense and he is a pass first point guard, which you don't really come by really often. And but we still haven't seen Lonzo in the playoffs. What he's made of. Is he a playoff kind of player? Is he gonna take it up a notch? But then he got the tools, and I think he will fit right into the Clippers. So once he moves into the Clippers, I think his protection is gonna drop slightly just because he will be sharing more. But at the same time, his his assist to turnover ratio is actually not bad as well. So once you make the transition, I mean, if he do get traded, I think Lonzo is gonna have a pretty big impact on the team. But fantasy wise, I think he would be somewhat like he might slow down a little in fantasy wise. That's how I see it. But then, but like on the other end of the spectrum, the spot that he's leaving behind, I think um, it will create a lot of minutes for the guards. But then there's another intriguing player who plays for the Pelicans, which I personally love. His name is Hayes. He is like he got hops, he got bounce, and
Jackson Hayes.
he pretty much he is. I still remember last year when he gets minute, he's around like a 15-10 guy with a couple of blocks. So he's somebody that to look out for as well. If Pelicans is going to do any more moves besides Lonzo, if they're going to create more rooms up front. But obviously, he's fighting with a lot of great players there. So with Zion,
Steven Adams needs to be
yeah,
moved then.
but then yeah, I mean, if Steven Adams get moved and Hayes get moved to a 5 spot, look out. He's gonna be like Christian Wood type of player without the threes, but yeah, very long and athletic, and who can fill the stats sheet pretty well.
Who do you got, Turbo? What's your signing or trade?
My signing and trade. So for me, this guy has been playing really well this season, but unfortunately, he was having a really strong start. And unfortunately, in the middle of after like 5 to 10 games, he got injured, and he just recently got back. Larry Lance Jr. So Larry Lance Jr. have been on a lot of trade rumors as well, but obviously not as much as Lonzo and DeRozan and other players that has garnished. But then if he do get traded, he's also another piece that's going to get a lot of heavy minutes too. So I think as he get back into a playing condition. I mean, he's still like 3-4 games in only. He's just going to continue to produce. And if he does get traded to a contender team, he's not going to be like a third or fourth option. He's just going to be a defensive specialist, and he's going to be filling up the stat sheets as well. Maybe not points, but then he'll be filling up steals, points, rebounds, percentage with his dunks. But then that also leaves a hole in the Cavaliers lineup. In terms of Cavaliers, I do not believe there's too many pickups that you could do, but people who are whichever Cavaliers player you're owning, that is that can eat up the spots of what Larry is leaving behind. That's going to help. But I'm going to go back to Jared Allen again. Jared Allen's going to benefit again if Larry Nance Jr. get traded, just because nobody will be fighting for him with the boards and everything else. So that's my trade.
Actually, it's funny that we talked about. Oh, sorry, Brian.
No, go ahead.
It's funny that we talked about like PJ Tucker, who is a better real life player than fantasy player. I actually think Larry Nance is the complete opposite. Larry Nance works so hard when he gets those minutes, so he's a very like good per 36 minute type of player. So that when he gets the minutes, he can get doubles, gets you steals, gets you blocks. He can even shoot threes now.
Yeah.
So when he gets opportunities, he's already getting opportunities now because it looks like Kevin Love's not really going to play in Cleveland. But even if he is on another team, say like they give him good, valuable, like say 22 to 25 minutes a game, he's still going to have a lot of good fantasy value.
Yeah.
He's one of those, Larry Nance Jr. is one of those very important energy, do-it-all type off the bench players that any contending team would love to have on their team. He reminds me of a little bit of old school. If you guys remember who Jerome Williams is, the junkyard dog. So very high energy. Yeah, high energy. Do everything, hustle, never give up. So it's funny. Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance Jr. are both ex-Lakers. So yeah, interesting.
It's going to be a fun one, guys. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of hours.
Yeah.